Dyer wave
3.
The soul, the spirit of a people. Architecture reflects the soul, the spirit of a people. And so therefore you can see the degeneracy, you can see the degradation, and the loss of aesthetics, the loss of the idea of there being harmony, order, symmetry in aesthetics is connected with the loss of a coherent worldview and philosophy. Dyer wave
3.
All right. Maybe we can make this work again. If I can get them fools back on the screen. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to try again. There we go. Look at them boys up there. That's a leprechaun right there. They look like a leprechaun. Where were we? In a world where trailers become reality, lightning storms turn off the Wi-Fi. Part 2, yeah. Well, I don't know. I think for Rockfin, I'll splice those two together because I was having fun in that first 30 minutes there before we got rudely interrupted by Father Lightning and Mother Thunderstorm. And I remember, too, I forgot to talk about this a couple streams ago. Jamie got me this as a joke. The CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. So now, via going to Borders Books and finding this, they're not Borders, that don't exist no more. Barnes & Noble, the CIA Manual. Now we know everything. So we have the CIA's official manual from Barnes & Noble's about trickery and deception. But the reason this is funny is because it talks about, there's a chapter in here about the CIA hiring magicians, right? Like stage magicians, like John Mulholland. John Mulholland was a stage magic. Joe Bluth basically teaching the CIA tricks of the trade. Sleight of hand. David Copperfield, get it? David Copperfield was a CIA agent. Did you know that? Just joking. That's a joke. Harry Houdini was a spy, though. I believe he was a spy for Scotland Yard. Is that right? If I remember my Harry Houdini history. The final countdown. Remember Job's theme song? What were we talking about? The Courier. The Courier. Benedict Cumberbatch involved in the illegal mustache trade with the Russians before we were rudely interrupted by Gaia. So this deals with the story of Western recruit Oleg Penkovsky, as we said, who was the KGB, the Russian GRU, Russian military intelligence guy who is recruited supposedly because in the movie they make him a hero because he is worried about the West being nuked. But if you watch the documentaries on his real story, it was because he was mad that he didn't get enough awards. So he wasn't very happy with his Soviet awards. He didn't get enough badges and medals, so he wanted to do damage. And of course, that's a typical kind of a recruitment thing where they look for anger at your home nation, anger at your being slighted in the military or in your profession, whatever it is. And so that becomes a weak point for you. That becomes a pressure point. And we'll see that in the movie Mobius as well, which we're going to cover after this. As we said, 4 different films tonight, one of them a documentary. And this dealt with the recruitment, not just of Oleg Penkovsky, but the British liquor swilling businessman Greville Wynn. What more British name could you come up with than Greville? It goes Greville Wynn, right? And as we saw in my Rockfin discussion of the Cambridge spy ring, quite a few of those Skittles boys over there, and worse, they ended up defecting. Philby and several of them, I think, just died drunk in their Moscow apartments So they basically got awarded Moscow apartments, and they just drank themselves to death. So there's a reason for this, though, because the spy trade, typically when it comes to this kind of stuff, compromising people, secrets and whatnot, well, you can imagine getting people all soused up on the sauce. Well, that's a good way to get people to start talking. Because everybody who starts drinking, get their drink on, everybody starts drinking, scissor up, they start spilling the beans. They blow the beans. They start blowing the beans. And if you're buzzed and you're blowing the beans, you start bragging, right? You're very likely to spill state secrets. So clearly, obviously, alcohol plays a big role, as does other types of drugging. Getting people ready to getting people all randy, getting them frisky. Perhaps that might play a role. And one of our films tonight has the character of a honey trap, the swallow, although it's unclear exactly whether she was that. Not exactly sure in Mobius if the French-American CIA girl, if she's supposed to be seducing him, but I think she doesn't know, right? Aren't we supposed to think that she doesn't know that he was Russian intelligence at the end, FSB? But it's a little unclear. Anyway, but back to the Courier. So all of these, as we said tonight, they're going to have a similar theme of fitting into the notion of not just that old canard of, can you serve the state and keep that on the down low as you juggle your home life, as you juggle your domestic mundane activities, and the yapping of a wife who doesn't trust you and doesn't understand that you're saving the West. You're saving us from nukes. We're all going to get nuked if Greville Wynn hadn't been drinking with the Russian generals. That's what we're supposed to think. Anyway, so the public story that everybody got was Khrushchev and the Cuban Missile Crisis are, the nukes are at the back door, right? They're in the backyard. They're about to just start flying from Castro's Cuba over there. And of course, I agree with the analysis that a lot of this was all exaggerated. And the story that we have here, this hero story, is that if it weren't for Greville Wynn and Oleg Penkovsky, we would not in the West have known exactly the capabilities of the surface-to-air missiles that the Soviets possessed, and exactly how the systems work in Cuba. So they had, the U-2 spy plane that went over, not Bono's U-2, but the U-2 spy plane, which I think U-2 is named after that, isn't it? Where they see the Soviet SAM sites, and they saw one in Cuba, but they didn't know how they worked. So Oleg comes in because supposedly the story is, in heroic fashion, he took pictures of the manuals, the boring ass tech manuals, with his little slide 60s camera, and passed that on underneath the mustache of Benedict Cucumber Snatch, and the CIA MI6 handlers saved the West. Okay, so that's the story that we're supposed to believe, according to the mainstream narrative, according to this movie from 1960, right before the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So we'll look at a little bit of this. I was like, where's that chick from? Oh, she's the one from Men. I didn't really care for Men. I'm sorry. A lot of people said, when are you going to analyze Men? Dudes giving birth to other dudes who give birth to other dudes. Spoiler alert. Pow! Just blew it up for you. Just spoiled that whole movie. But what was this supposed to be? Is this some sort of bizarre feminist message? I don't even understand. I mean, Ex Machina, okay, that was good, but what in the heck is Men about? The whole village is a bunch of evil patriarchy oppressors who oppress this woman for no reason, because they're just evil patriarchs. And that's just what patriarchs do, is the evil patriarchy lives to do nothing but oppress the women nonstop. And turns out it's like some weird, the Green Man pops up, and there's dudes that just give birth to dudes. I mean, what? And I'm sure there's some philosophical message that I don't get, but whatever, dude. I didn't care for men. And so here we have the stodgy British folk. Very stodgy. Stodgy British intelligence folks recruiting Benedict Cucumber Mustache. Benedict Cumber Mustache. Cumber Stash. Benedict Cumber Stash. And that's the guy who plays Oleg. Here's German GRU buddy. And he's boring old businessman. And they're like, we need you to put this recorder on your tie clip and get us the secrets that he's up to, and transfer us the documents and the microfilm and the blah, 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 blah. And you can imagine what happens. And of course, they all get caught. And his punishment is 2 years in the gulag. And his wife visits him. I don't know how they would let his wife come visit him in a Russian gulag. I don't believe that. That's what? That doesn't make any sense. And then they let him out. So I think we could look and see probably the real guy. I mean, he kind of looks like the real guy. I watched this today, which was pretty good going into the background of it. But that little video explains that it was... Here's the video at the end of the movie they show. Let's see if we can make this one work. But yeah, I mean, again, as we said, these the anti-Russian stuff comes out right now, and
Have you any comments to make
and that's clearly part of propaganda. It's part of the geopolitical agenda right now.
on the way you were treated in prison?
So this is the real guy that Benedict Cumberstash, Cucumber Stash, is playing, and this is after he's let loose from the East German Stasi prison. I guess that's more believable because it wasn't a Russian prison, right? It was East German. So maybe it's believable that his wife could come visit him in the East German prison, but he doesn't look too punished and malnourished there. Like in the film, Benedict Cucumber Snatch turns into like Christian Bale in The Machinist. Like he goes straight up like AIDS. You know what I'm saying? He turns into like a just a skinny old thing.
Not at this stage, gentlemen. They treated me in the way that they felt about things.
Is this a prison haircut, Mr. Wynne?
It's their interpretation of the haircut, but it goes a little less than it is now.
When did you first know you
In
were
fact,
coming home,
they
Mr.
shave
Wynne?
heads.
When did
Shave
you,
my head.
When did you first know you were coming home, Mr. Wynne?
Well, this was the same question, you see. I didn't know until officially I was coming home until I was taken from this place in East Berlin.
When were you
that
home?
was this morning. This
That was this morning.
This
When
was
were
this
you
morning.
handed over?
Excuse me, this morning at 4 o'clock.
Mr. Wynne, a lot of people...
He does seem a little disoriented, so all right, so anyway, that's the real guy. They play this clip at the end of the film, but the most relevant thing here was that this is a timely piece of propaganda that came out in 2021, probably in anticipation of the things that we've seen in the last couple of years, especially the events in the Ukraine. So you get this never-ending sort of cycle of the Russian threat film, and they never cease to churn these out. In fact, as I was pointing out in part one before the internet cut out, they were even making like Clancy movies about the IRA. Remember that? And I actually found a couple other spy movies that were forgotten about the secret Irish Republican Army terrorists that are supposedly gonna infiltrate and take down Uncle Sam. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? But the main point here is that if you watch the little documentary clip here, it points out that what we see in most people's analysis, which is that it was exaggerated. The Soviet capabilities were exaggerated. They have some CIA guy in here being like, yeah, we thought that they had on a scale of a power, they had a 10. And he said, turns out it was more like a 5 or 6. But they wanted that hyped up, as we know from the Wemhoff book, to get the Cold War continued, to keep it going. Right. So this is 62 or so, Cuban Missile Crisis period. I forget the exact, when does Wemhoff say Cold War kicks off? Like exactly 48, 52. I forget the exact year that he cites the National Security Memorandum that really kicks off supposedly the technical Cold War. But point is that they wanted this continued on and to continue going all the way up until what, 88, 89, 90, 91. Because I think if the Soviet, in my view, if the Soviet experiment, as they called it, had been successful, I suspect that they probably would have just gone with the third way model, because they were really pushing the really hardcore globalists at that time in the CFR, in those entities. They were pushing for what they called the third way, which is the synthesis between Eastern Bloc communism and Western capitalism. So that didn't exactly happen. That's not exactly what they got. However, what we are getting now with Great Reset is essentially that. It's basically a version of, a morphed version of what the third way was supposed to be, right? And that's why people get confused and they can't figure out what's going on in the NWO, and they're still caught up in their, Republican Democrat dialectic, because they can't figure out that, right, the right wingers think it's the commies and the socialists, right? And then the libtards think that it's what, corporate elite. Corporations are taking over. But now, of course, they actually like the corporation. So corporations are cool, according to the left, because of, Skittles or whatever. So just brand it right, and it doesn't matter what your policies are. Even though the left, like literally 5 years prior, hated corporations, right? Fortune 100 were like the enemies. Now they're all cool though, so no problems there. Everything's good. We're all good to go. Fortune 100 bros, everything's cool. Anyway, so long story short, Greville Wynn, it really is a masterstroke of propaganda in a way, because the idea being this normal, boring businessman, right? Thwart of the West. And what better hero than a businessman, right, to represent the West, thwarted the evil machinations of the statist Soviet monsters of the East. Now, again, I'm not saying that the Soviets are good guys, right? But that's not the point. The point is that the narrative of Greville Wynn is clearly a stroke of propaganda. I mean, who actually believes that this bumbling businessman, right, who basically can't, his marriage is basically falling apart. He seems to be an alcoholic, basically, but somehow the fate of the Western world is upon his shoulders, and he powers through. Good old British resolve. He powers through, you see. With stodgy British resolve, he powers through and saves the day. With that ridiculous mustache. So from a fictional movie perspective, it's not a bad movie. It's pretty fun. The art direction is really well done. It definitely feels like it's the early 60s, and they accurately capture the spirit of the British stodginess. Very stodgy. Very stodgy. Quite a bit dodgy, you say? I do say so myself. Quite stodgy and dodgy, you say. Jamie, could you bring me a glass of water? Impersonating stodgy British men has made me cough a lot. And as I was pointing out, if you want a deeper analysis into this, then you go over to my Rockfin and you watch the Occult Spies lecture where we got into the Cambridge Five really deep. We got really deep into the Cambridge Spy ring and how that also touched on the occult. One of the films that we watched tonight touched on the occult, and I didn't expect it at all. Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That was weird, right? The occult bookstore as a front. Interesting. So we'll get to that in a second. But I did want to mention, thank you. The Brits are attacking me because of my impressions. Here. Attack this man with nanopollens. How dare he? How dare he call us stodgy? Make him cough right now, sir. I wanted to remember, was there anything else I wanted to get to? Play a little bit of this clip about Oleg, and you'll see my point.
As the Cold War intensified through the 1950s, pressure on the CIA increased. The West was desperate for detail about the size and strength of Soviet forces, glimpsed and photographed at Moscow air shows or May Day parades. It was the Soviet missile force which worried the CIA most, and about which they knew the least.
This photograph was taken in a hotel
Skipping ahead a bit.
in London in April 1961 after one of our meetings where Oleg Pankovsky on the left, me on the right, enjoying a small glass of wine.
So that's the real Oleg there. This is his CIA contact, not the Greville Wynn Benedict character.
Pankovsky provided further reassurances about the limitations of Soviet power.
While they were still a serious threat, no question about it, they were strong militarily, absolutely strong militarily, but they were not as strong as our estimators had felt. And he helped us bring it down to the level where they really were. They were not 10 feet tall, they were about my size, 6'2".
So as you can see, as this is pointed out by a lot of people, Quigley points this out, that the threat was exaggerated. It was exaggerated by the Cold Warriors for the purpose of the Cold War. And one of the other films, I think, the Colby documentary brings up the American Century, right? Henry Luce, Skull and Bones' propaganda, PR selling of the terminology, the American Century, right? That was all part of Henry Luce's propaganda. And that was a big conglomeration on the part of Rockefeller Foundation, their control of the WASP world, and the utilization of Vatican II and the Roman Catholic Church to make it into basically an NGO for Americanism. And that was a big piece of understanding Vatican II. If you don't understand that, you really can't understand the totality of Vatican II. And I was surprised. In fact, two different people had said, watch this Colby documentary because it really backs up a lot of what you talk about. Well, it backs up what Wemhoff talks about, right, in his books. And that's the geopolitical espionage angle that you can't understand these elements without. Right. I mean, if you're a Spurg and you're a theology nerd and you think all of this is just about, getting the precise theology right, that's not what all this is about. Right. The world is bigger than that. I think in the big picture, that's ultimately what matters. But it's sort of like in the Dune novel, we have this principle that I'm getting at work there, where most of the people engaged in the espionage and the courtly intrigue, they don't believe the prophecies. They don't believe the prophecies about the Kwisatz Haderach. They just think it's ways to manipulate the population on the part of the state. The Harkonnens, right, the Emperor, the Witch Guild, the Bene Gesserits, they see Paul and the whole prophecy about Paul as just some tool to manipulate. It's just a way to control people. And that's fitting because a lot of people think of religion that way, right? Especially people in the state. The attitude of the state towards religion is, how is this useful for power politics? They don't care about whether it's true or false. In fact, I'm sure most of them think that it's false. So they're not idealistic. And we're going to find Richard Burton in an excellent line from The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, explaining this attitude of the state to espionage, to spycraft, and to what that really is, and how people are sold on this ridiculous romantic notion of basically a job that is like a cop turning people into confidential informants. That's all it is. Okay. It's just co-opting people into confidential informant work on a macro scale. That's it. So it's not that glamorous, right? We're not talking about James Bond. We're talking about, I don't know, what's some stupid ass cop drama, right? That's much more realistic, right? Where the cops are trying to get somebody to be their CI. Okay, that's what's really going on here. But this is an important angle. Just think about all of the sexual issues in the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, not all of it, but a big part of that. What do you think that is? What are other operations where we might have seen something like that? Jeff Stein McEffrey? What is that? Well, that's blackmail. You don't think high-profile cardinals, popes, should be perhaps blackmailed? Well, if you're thinking on the vantage point of power politics, duh. What did you think, right? And we saw, again, multiple situations in my long Cambridge spy ring where we also covered Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's dad. We covered Victor Child, remember that? And other characters that Anthony Sutton speaks about in his works. People Quigley talks about, who were kind of above, they were sort of a strata above the Cold War dialectic. Because in the Cold War dialectic, people bought into the idea of we're the good guys or the bad guys. The other side said we're the good guys or the bad guys. And it's true that Bolshevism and communism and Sovietism are inherently atheistic. But is the Western monopoly capitalist system any less atheistic? I'm not sure it is. Maybe at one point you can make this argument. I don't know. I didn't live. I lived part of my life in the Cold War when I was a kid, but I just don't know that with what we've seen the Fortune 100/500 roll out globally, that there really is any difference at the top. And I think that's the main point here. So, they found the pressure point with Penkovsky, that apparently he was bitter about not getting enough medals and badges, hanging off of his suit or whatever. And so he was a pressure point, a node, a choke point by which they could supposedly get the manuals that told the West how the SAMs worked. That's at least the public story that we have with this. But in my analysis, really this is just a timely piece of propaganda that comes out. So decent as a film, worth watching, but not anything really spectacular or particularly insightful. However, I will point out that it is fairly common that you find people recruited to do this kind of stuff that you wouldn't expect. So that is something that the film gives us an insight into, that is a real world thing where, people who you wouldn't think are spies are clearly, obviously recruited. I have old intelligence textbooks that I bought that talk about that, right? That talk about instructions giving to people who are learning tradecraft that it might be beneficial for you to recruit an academic. You might want to recruit a CEO. You might want to recruit a bellhop. Okay, if you read Gordon Thomas's books, you'll find out that pretty sure in the case of Henri Paul and a bellhop, that played a pretty significant role in the Diana incident. At least that's what Gordon Thomas records in one of his books that has a significant chapter on Diana. And why might a bellhop be an important person? Well, obviously, if you wanted to run some kind of operation, a bellhop would be a perfect person to let you know when they've checked in and when they've checked out, or when they've left to go to the evening event to drive in the underpass where that ASSASSINATION took place. Duh. I mean, who actually believes that it was just a random accident? I mean, who really? And also in the case of the suspicious passing of William Colby, I mean, so he's an accomplished sailor and he just floats off one night and the body washes up. I don't buy that. And he's an interesting, complicated character. And I hadn't really paid much attention to Colby. We'll get to the Colby documentary in a second, but next, it's called The Man Nobody Knew. I do recommend watching it because it does really vindicate a lot of the analysis of, especially Wemhoff, and a lot of what we talked about too. But before we do that, I want to cover Mobius, which is the Jean Dujardin Tim Roth film. Independent film. I think it's either a French or Belgian movie. I can't remember, but again, something kind of a little closer to reality when it comes to the world of espionage, as opposed to, James Bond. And so, in the last stream, I think we did a couple LeCarre. We did Philip Seymour Hoffman's last movie, Most Wanted Man, and that's a LeCarre story. And we did one of his other ones. I forget what. I didn't care for that new one with Ewan McGregor. I didn't think it was very good. It was pretty boring. And this is in the same vein, right? I mean, I don't remember. This is foreign directors, but it's a more accurate portrayal of what actually goes on in this domain. And going back and watching this, I watched it when it came out, and I remember being sort of fascinated with it. I thought it was a really well-made spy film. But now, knowing a lot of what I know about that time period and about the 2000s, early and middle 2000s, and what went on with Russian oligarchs, shall we say, that actually is a big part of this movie. And the Tim Roth character is a Russian oligarch. Right? I didn't even notice that. That's all really obvious now going back and watching this. And if you've not seen this, I do recommend this movie. I'll put the trailer here for you. And if you have seen it, maybe you can help me understand. I don't understand if the blonde chick was she a swallow? I mean, the CIA said her mission was to embed her in the circles of FSB and then to recruit an FSB handler to be a spy for the CIA. But I'm guessing that at the end she's crying because she didn't know who the handler was and who they were really after. Is that what we're supposed to think? And then she's crying because it ends up being him. But how was that not obvious? Who did she? Didn't she right away think he was Russian intelligence? I mean, and he was like, "No, I'm a publisher." Right? Come on. I mean, so that was always unclear to me. I can't understand how she didn't know that he was behind it, that he was running this operation. But I think that's what we're supposed to think. And so if she didn't know, then she wasn't a swallow. But if she did know, then she was a honey trap. And right? I mean, I thought America has always tried to project the image. Oh, we don't do that, right? Russians do the sexpionage. We don't do that. We would never do that. Really? Come on. Who believes that? So Monaco looks pretty badass. I mean, Monaco looks like basically like Europe, Florida, right? European Florida. That's pretty sweet. I'll take that. And so here you have showing, obviously, he's Russian intelligence. He's going to, with his team, try to go after the Russian oligarch character, right? So Tim Roth, the Russian oligarch character, has enemies in the Kremlin who want to go after him and boot him, and he'll have to go stay in the UK. Well, this is more or less based in reality. This is kind of what happened. This is a big part of why there's tension between oligarchs who left Russia to go to the UK and Vlad. So some curious sort of real world stuff going on there. And so we think, for at least the first portion of the film, that this is ultimately about the CIA blonde girl recruit going after the Tim Roth character as well, because her legend, her cover is that she committed derivatives financial scam crimes, and so she can't come back to the U.S. So she has to work in a foreign bank, trading basically and trying to do swing trades or something. Anyway, that's not what she's up to. Obviously, she's CIA, and she ends up being the honey trap for the Jean Dujardin character, whether she intended or not, I'm not sure. But his boss, the FSB guy who wants to be the head of the FSB, his boss keeps telling him she is a honey trap. She is the problem. Don't stop seeing her. And he can't resist because she plays him perfectly. And he ends up, the whole operation gets compromised, basically. Well, the operation actually ends up being a success, but he ends up compromised. He ends up having to work for the CIA. He gets turned, he gets flipped, and they poison her, which was a surprise. I'd forgotten about that. I mean, the most revealing scene in the film is when he shows up to the dinner and she's there. And so he's been deceived. But it's kind of funny because, how did he not see this? Like, it was so obvious that she was a spy. I mean, it's like, right. But I think, again, everybody loves this dynamic in the spy films. It's like the angry chief in a cop film, right? Like, you can't have a cop movie without an angry chief yelling and cussing, right? And give me your badge, right? Turn it in. Give me your gun and your badge. Never have a cop film without that. Right. Well, in the same way, you can't have a spy film where, like, the spy isn't blinded by the love of his love interest versus his country. Right. This is just classic. But really should have been pretty obvious. But maybe we think he did know. Right. Maybe he did know deep down that he was making a mistake. But he wants out. Right. Just like, again, another spy movie trope. He wants out. They keep pulling me back in. Right. Like Michael Corleone, right? Every time I try to get out, they keep pulling me back in. Remember that dude? That dude was like he was on top for a while. Jean Dujardin with the artist. And then he just kind of disappeared. Like, whatever happened to that dude? Where's he at? He won the Oscar for the artist. And he was like the coolest dude. And then I guess he went back to France. I don't know. Anyway, but that's essentially that's the essence of that film. I don't think I can. There's a couple interesting symbolic elements that I noticed this time watching it that I didn't catch the first time, which was it moves from Club Destiny to Club Apocalypse. Did you notice the bars that they go to? And there's a weird twist where it's sort of like at Club Destiny, they're getting along when he meets her and she's starting to seduce him, and he tells her, I want out of this life. I want to go do something different. Let's run away to Canada. Let's run away to wherever. And she remarks about his destiny. And then he says, I know a better bar. Let's go to Club Apocalypse. So he should have stayed in Club Destiny. I don't know why he wanted to move to Club Apocalypse, but they moved to Club Apocalypse, and that's where everything goes downhill. Things get worse and worse and worse. We even have the bad guys explaining about the blonde CIA agent that she's a sneaky bitch, right? The head of security for Tim Roth is suspicious of her and says she's a sneaky bitch. And she is. However, this ends up with her being poisoned, if you remember. She ends up poisoned. Her real name, according to her CIA handle, is Alice. Alice in Wonderland, mind control. And her whole mission was, again, to infiltrate Russian intelligence and to flip Jean Dujardin, which she does. So, overall, really good film. Fairly realistic spy world portrayal. Russian oligarchs, CIA, FSB. It kind of ends up being a sort of a propagandist type of movie because Jean Dujardin has to become CIA to find his way home, right? So he's flipped by the CIA. He doesn't really like it, but there's redemption at the end for him because when he goes to meet her in the hospital after she's been poisoned, she's brain damaged, but she recognizes his big, strong arms. That was a little cheesy. I would have preferred a less cheeseball ending for the movie. Either she should have died and he gets out of the life, or they run away. That would have even been better than this cheeseball thing of where she feels his arms and that triggers her memory to come back. I mean, this is just corny. So why you want to have such a realistic spy film and then this cornball element, I don't know. But it is what it is. It is worth watching. Decent spy film. I think you would enjoy it. By the way, it was Tim Roth that poisoned her, right? Which is interesting because pretty sure probably Russian oligarchs do poison people. Right? So the media tells us that Russian intelligence is running around poisoning everybody. I'm not sure about that. I think it's probably other intelligence agencies running around doing this and saying, right, that the Russians are doing everything. And is she the honey trap? Has anybody seen this movie? Can you enlighten me? I can't figure out if she is the honey trap. I mean, when Tim Roth has her poisoned, he's like, kill the whore. Right? So he seemed to think she was, but it was hard to say. All right, let's move on to our next movie and then the documentary. By the way, you can support the show via Super Chats. The Super Chats are done through the... I took a bunch of notes on this. Where are my notes? Through the Streamlabs link. So use the Streamlabs link in the show description to send Super Chats to support the show. We've had three so far. That's pretty good. Where is everybody tonight? What's more interesting? I mean, so only 200 people want to know how the world really works. Like everybody else is watching what? Elmo videos? What do people on YouTube watch? Valsh? Elmo? What else is there to watch? Well, at least we have over 200 people who have high IQs who want to learn real stuff and not mouth-breathing, drooling, tard level stuff with everyone else. But The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, interesting. Another in the George Smiley series, although Smiley doesn't play a central role here. It's sort of characters in the orbit of George Smiley. The LeCarre character clearly based on him to some degree, who then must interact with, again, East Germans. So more of the East German spy network. Not the NASIs, but now the Stasis. East German Stasi. And we get some fascinating racial jokes and interplay going on in this that probably would not be allowed nowadays. Of course, he's just writing about the realities of Cold War espionage. And we find a rivalry between a, how should we say it? A certain character and a German character. And so this is an extremely intricate plot. We know in most of the spy films that we cover, there's really intricate plots. And here we have Richard Burton playing a British intelligence agent who is stationed in East Germany and is running a guy he's in West Germany. He's running an agent in East Germany who tries to come across the wall and is shot. And he's shot because his opposite for the East German Stasi, Herr Munt, is the most cunning of the East German Stasi. And he spoiled his agent in operation. And so Richard Burton is burnt out and depressed and heads back to his handler and says, he's foiled us again. What can we do? And so British intelligence comes up with a plot to get back at Munt because Herr Munt is too clever. How do we stop Herr Munt? And so they devise a clever plot, which actually it's a super clever. It's a 66D chess, right? This is the kind of plot that people in the Q crap thought Trump was up to, right? This is what they thought was going on, right?
66-dimensional chess. It's going to be wonderful, really. It's great. It's awesome. It's wonderful. 66 dimensions. I'm playing them all.
Right? When it was more like 3.5D chess being played, right? Not 66. Well, here it's actual 66-dimensional chess being played. And the plot is, let's see if we can summarize it, boil it down. So they're going to play on the fact that they lost their agent and that Richard Burton is depressed and beaten. And so they reassign him in a communist hotspot at an occult bookstore. However, his drunken depression binge, burnt out persona is a legend itself. The legend being the story that's concocted. He's not actually that. He is still working in his position, we think, to now infiltrate under this clever legend as a burnt out, angry at his own government guy who's now going to be a librarian at an occult bookstore. Now, this isn't really, they don't go into this in the story very much. I've not read this book, by the way. I read the book that's the basis for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I read that LeCarre book. I haven't read this one, so I've only seen this movie. But so I don't know if it goes into any more in the book. But in the movie, it's said to be a bookstore for the Society for Psychical Research. And if you remember in Quigley talks about how the British elite, the aristocracy, Royal Society, Astor, Cliveden set, they were really into this too. Well, this is fascinating because the Bolsheviks were really into these things. So you have this weird confluence of people that we covered with the talk that we did on Nicholas Roerich, Wallace, Bolshevism, Gleb Boki, Madame Blavatsky, all of those occult Bolshevists. And then we also have this high-level British establishment crew that are also into the same occult stuff. And some of them thought that the Society for Psychical Research and mentalism would be the religion of the New Age, right? Remember, that was an odd thing that we saw in Quigley, right? I was surprised to see him saying that they thought that's what would be the religion of the New Age. Even one of them mentioned Christian Science being the possible New Age religion, which is wacky, goofy stuff, right? But in this film, the bookstore, the Society for Psychical Research, it's a hotbed of commies, right? And so Richard Burton is then tasked with seducing Nan, and Nan is really the outer orbit of East German communist Soviets, right? She's a member of the party, but she's the lowest kind of street level dupe who is idealistic and actually believes in the cause, right? And so when as soon as they meet and they have their little, dinner drinking dalliance, like he's already laughing at her because she actually believes the ideology of the Soviets, and she's into disarmament. She has these big posters up and she's talking about disarmament and how she actually thinks that the Soviets are going to rid the world of nukes and bring about peace and make an end to war, which is odd because the whole idea of Sovietism, Marxism, is perpetual struggle, perpetual strife, perpetual war. So, but apparently, I think what we're supposed to think is that the Soviets had done a significant job in foreign operations and convincing the target populations that they were peace movements, right? So they were funding the peace movements, funding a lot of the leftist causes, and this convinced Nan as this sort of young idealistic character to go along. But now she's a tool, she's a pawn for Richard Burton to seduce her, and he is a kind of as they call it, a raven. So a guy who seduces women in espionage is a raven. The girl is a swallow. So he's a kind of a raven here, and he seduces Nan, but Nan isn't really, she's obviously not a target. She doesn't know anything, right? Nan is merely a means to the next person who approaches him after hanging out with Nan and says, hey, you're a drunk ex-soldier, government employee. We have a charity network that we want to set you up with. And he's also a Skittles man. So we find out that, again, more realism comes in because many of these Soviet spies, especially in Victor Child's network, were Skittles men. And that's partly how they were controlled and handled and run because their vices allowed them to be controlled at that time, especially, right? I'm saying it allowed them to be controlled because that was considered illegal, at least at that time publicly. Man, my allergies are going nuts, dude. Once it rains, Pollen Boy comes out, and then I can't. I can barely function. Anyway, so this really intricate plot, so I'm going to explain all this. So then he moves from the Skittles dude to the next guy who sets him up with a meeting with Hermunt and Hermunt's underling, the Jewish guy. I don't remember his name. But British intelligence has figured out that because the underling to Munt is a Jewish guy, and because Munt was formerly part of the NASI youth, there's a rivalry there, and the Jewish KGB guy would like to unseat Hermunt, who is now East German Stasi. And so British intelligence plays on that, and they cook up this extremely elaborate plot where Richard Burton appears to be defecting or aiding the KGB. And he's ready to sell state secrets. He's ready to give over all this information for a price. So he really plays up what the KGB would perceive the bourgeoisie traitor to be, right? All they want is money. They will only take, all they want is their money. Well, this is all a ruse by British intelligence. And Hermunt figures all this out. But the KGB are stuck in this position then when they'll have to choose between Hermunt and the Jewish KGB officer, East German Stasi, who wants to get rid of Munt. And so then we have the famous courtroom scene. And this is one of the best scenes in the film, although John LeCarre said it was really ridiculous and exaggerated, like the show trial. So it's an interesting show trial, but not realistic, he says. They wouldn't have really done it that way. And it all comes down, of course, to the actual. It's very Hitchcock-esque. It's a very Hitchcockian scene where in the show trial, Richard Burton is there, and they bring in their surprise witness, who is Nan, right? His girlfriend. Nan doesn't know why she's there, and they ask her, does Richard Burton know a guy named George Smiley? And she's like, yeah, right? And this, of course, gives away the fact that Richard Burton is not who he claimed to be. He was not actually there to sell state secrets, but that he had a covert operation, which was to unseat and destroy Munt. And the plot involved the accusation that Munt was a British intelligence agent. And this is what the Jewish Stasi agent had discovered to try to get rid of Munt. Then, final reveal, big plot twist. Turns out, guess what? Richard Burton was used and was lied to by British intelligence because Herr Munt actually was a British intelligence spy the whole time. And that had been hidden from him. And at the end, burnt out, betrayed, and unhappy with his own masters, and unwilling to defect to the East German Stasi, and then losing his girlfriend, who is caught up in this. And by the way, his handlers had promised him that his girlfriend would not be hurt because she was just an idealistic dupe. She ends up shot trying to cross the wall. And then he's frozen there between the wall in a very symbolic scene as he's climbing over, where the East German Stasi are telling him, go back. Right? The British are telling him, come on, hurry up. And he's just frozen there. And then he decides to get back on the East German side and be shot. And the reason for this is because there is a scene. Let me see if I got to find the right scene. There's a specific, I think it's this car scene. This is it. So this is the most revealing scene in the movie that tells us really what. I don't think this is actually, this is it. Yeah. This is the reality of this whole thing. This is the whole point of it right here.
How big does a cause have to be before you kill your friends?
Oh, that's not it. The car scene is the most important scene, right? That's what I'm trying to play. I thought that was it. Let's see if we can find that clip, because maybe this is it. Yeah.
Wait here.
Why did Munt let me go? I'm a risk to him now.
As you said, it was a bargain. No you, no me.
What was my part in all this? I want to know.
You were a pawn in the plot. London knew it was no good just killing Fiedler.
Pawn in the plot.
Killed, people would have started asking by who, why. Maybe told friends he suspected, or maybe left notes, incriminating notes. London had to eliminate suspicion. Public rehabilitation, that's what they organized for Munt. I was sent to discredit him, he was sent to discredit me.
And love?
We made it very easy for them. They used us. They cheated us both because it was necessary. Fiedler was nearly home already. If it hadn't been for us, Munt would have been killed. They were bloody clever. All the way down the line, they were bloody clever.
Clever, they were foul. How can you turn the world upside down? What rules are you playing?
There's only one rule. Expediency. Munt gives London what it needs, so Fiedler dies and Munt lives. It was a foul, foul operation, but it paid off.
Who for?
What the hell do you think spies are? Moral philosophers measuring everything they do against the word of God or God.
What do you think spies are? Moral philosophers measuring everything they do against the words of God or Karl Marx?
They're not. They're just a bunch of seedy, squalid bastards.
CDs. Seedy, squalid bastards.
Henpecked husbands, civil servants.
Drunkards. Skittles men. Henpecked husbands.
They sit like monks in the cell, balancing right against wrong. Yesterday I would have killed Munt, because I thought him evil and an enemy, but not today. moronic masses you admire so much can sleep soundly in their flea-bitten beds again. They need him for the safety of ordinary, crummy people like you and me.
You killed Fiedler.
How big does a cause have to be before you kill your friends? What about your party? There's a few million bodies on that path.
And so there you go, the classic scene from that movie where Richard Burton really gives the essence of the spy trade away. What's it really about? It's really about betraying people. It's really about expediency. It's about control. There's a similar scene in The Village, right? The global village in The Village. Do you remember that scene in The Prisoner? Because the whole thing that number 6 has to figure out is that there's not two sides, there's one side. Here you go.
There are no words to...
And really, I mean, again, I can't stress that enough, that the Great Reset, all of this really shows that this was a dialectic, was it not?
Stay. Has it ever occurred to you that you're just as much a prisoner as I am?
Oh, my dear chap, of course, I know too much. We're both lifers. I am definitely an optimist. That's why it doesn't matter who number 1 is. It doesn't matter which side runs the village.
It's run by one side or the other.
Oh, certainly. But both sides are becoming identical. What, in fact, has been created? An international community. A perfect blueprint for world order. When the sides face
there you
each
go.
other, suddenly realize that they're looking into a mirror, they will see that this is the pattern for the future.
The whole Earth has the village.
That is my hope. What's yours?
I'd like to be the first man on the moon.
There you go. It is the whole world as one global order. Both sides, East and West, coming together in the Hegelian synthesis. And between 6 and number 1, or excuse me, number 2 and number 1. Number 6 is number 1. Spoiler. You have this key conversation in the show where they admit that both of the sides look at each other and they find that they're saying the same things. That's the whole point, right? The goal of both monopoly capitalism and top-down communism is the same. I mean, does it matter whether it's Stalin and the whole country is a corporation, or whether it's CEO DeMarcus Zuckerberg and the whole country is a corporation? I mean, what's the big difference? What's the real difference there? Other than like one works more efficient, maybe? And what did Richard Burton say? Efficiency. And so, again, The Prisoner, another classic element of espionage science fiction, dystopia, telling you everything about how the world really works right there. And so everybody's still buying into... I mean, keep in mind that all of the hype and the hysteria that we deal with in the last year, the last few months, this is all extension of Cold War. So I want to add to a little bit of a promo here, guys, that we do have an excellent debate challenge that Seraphim Hamilton released today against not just this Hamza dude, but also against anybody from his den, Hamza's den, and E.F. Dawa or any of these characters. And so I did want to promote this because we wanted this to kind of get out there. So here is the debate challenge. I told Lewis I would promote this. Here's the debate challenge that Hamilton gives.
Hi, my name is Seraphim Hamilton. I have a master's degree in early Christian studies from the University of Notre Dame and a Master of Theology from Duke University. I've been doing apologetics in some capacity for about 15 years, and I have a channel of about 8,500 subscribers. In the past, I've debated on various topics, Shabir Ali, Matt Slick, Swansana, and Sami Zaatari.
But it seems that the stories that the Quran selects are ones that are available to Muhammad and the early Muslims, and that very strongly indicates, I think, human authorship by fallible men who were looking at texts written generations and generations after the life of Jesus and simply taking them to be reliable.
And I'd like to directly invite Hamza Miyat of Hamza's Den to a structured and moderated debate on any or all of the following topics. Is the New Testament reliable? Was Paul an authentic disciple of Jesus? Or is Jesus God according to the Bible? I'd be happy to engage on any or all of these topics at an agreed upon date in the future, and I hope Hamza accepts my invitation so that we can have a productive engagement.
SubhanAllah, the last thing you want to do with me is give me a month to research a topic. Yeah? So I know this is what you want to talk about. And you give me a month to research that topic, and then we're going to debate that topic. Deary, deary me. I'll rinse you. SubhanAllah. I'll rinse you.
I'll rinse you?
You give me a month to look at all the arguments, all the claims, all the counterclaims, all the rebuttals, this, that, the other. And you wanna go...
Leprechauns converting to Islam, dude. That's crazy. I'll rinse you with me gourd. Underneath me gourd. All right. So yeah, they're as usual. Talk. But we'll see if anything actually happens out of that. Guys, look. There's a lot of soy males out there. We got to stop this. We got to combat the soy. We don't do it with hand farts or underarm farts. How do we combat the soy? We do it through today's show sponsor, the most red pill based corporation in existence in the United States. That is Chalk.com. Chalk is our show sponsor. They have the best organic supplements available. You can head on over to Chalk.com right now. The show link in the show description, there is the link for Chalk.com. You can get really the best adaptogens that are out there. We have a nutrient deficient diet, and so it's absolutely necessary to, I think, for our health, in my view, to supplement. And not all supplements are created equal. Some supplements are cheap. Some of them are, sus. We've been using and trying and experimenting with various Chalk products for the last, 8 or 9 months now, going on 6, 7, 8, 9 months. And I really love their products. They use pure hot water extracts. It's 100 to 1 in terms of their extract roots. Their ingredients are extremely stringent in terms of purity requirements. They're the best when it comes to giving discounts. I mean, this promo code has been available for a while now. It used to be 60%. So if you want to take advantage of that 50% discount now, use the promo code J50, that's JAY50, and 50% off anything that they offer. You have to use that promo code, though. There's a little better discount, though, if you want the recurring, so you don't have to keep putting that stuff in. Right, you don't have to go back after a month and put all that information back in. No, it's gonna, just like Amazon has, they're gonna send it to you on a recurring subscription. Use the promo code J53LIFE, J53LIFE, and get that Chalk coming to you on a regular basis. Shilajit, people in the carnivore community are falling in love with Shilajit. Keto people love it as well, and there's nothing wrong with it because it's very compatible with that kind of a diet. So you're not going to be messing up, your keto carnivore diet if you want the advantages of Shilajit, right? Jamie loves it. She takes Shilajit every day. That or the Irish moss for hormone balance, all that kind of stuff. It's perfect for the ladies and the dudes. But the Tonkat Ali is the classic when it comes to boosting testosterone, proven in peer-reviewed studies. I got a message from some of the guys at church who won the free supplements at the live event that we did in Nashville, and he was like, dude, I couldn't sleep after I took your Tonkat. I was like, I told you if you take the Tonkat and you try to go sleep, you're not going to sleep. I warned you not to do that. He said, dude, it works. I'm like, yeah, there's your proof. So head on over to Chalk.com. Or it's better than organic. Like, their stuff is rainforest sourced. It's a tier up beyond organic, man. It's the best. And they're also a show sponsor, our key show sponsor. So the best way to support my show is to support Chalk.com. And don't wait around to do it. Go ahead and get on over there and make the order right now. The link is in the show description. So it's interesting that they called it Operation Rolling Stone in the film. I'm not sure what to make of that. It could have been just happenstance. We don't really know why they choose these names that they do for these operations. But the operation itself was a kind of fake flag operation, or it was a disinformation operation to give the impression that Richard Burton wanted to defect. And the great twist of irony in the film is that even though he didn't want to defect at the end, he felt betrayed by both power structures, because the East Germans killed Nan, and he also blamed British intelligence and his handlers because of this nasty business, this nasty work of espionage, which must be done. And he had also been betrayed because British intelligence kept from him the fact that Munt actually was on the British payroll. And so he had been told that, no, that wasn't the case. He had been lied to. And so there was sort of a betrayal from both power structures, because neither power structure was actually working for the people, so to speak. And of course, both sides would portray themselves as defenders of the people, right? But whether it's the degenerate elite in London or the degenerate elite in Moscow, the atheist elite, none of them were, quote, for the people. It was really pure raw power. And so that's the key point to take away here, is that the world that we live in now is the product of this managed dialectic of the Cold War. To me, it's really evident that that's the case. Boomers, it's not, they can't see that. They were so entrenched in the Cold War mindset, they can't get that. They can't grasp that. However, what are we to make of the documentary about Chief Cold Warrior himself, the man nobody knew, William Colby? We'll look a little bit of we'll look at the trailer for this.
William Colby has been missing since April 27th. His canoe was found washed up on the banks of the Wicomico River, April 28th.
My father was a soldier. He jumped out of airplanes. He lived to serve.
Now, keep in mind that Colby is a trad cat, and that's going to be really relevant for this analysis. Again, it vindicates a lot of what we've talked about. And by the way, the documentary is made by his son. I forget his son's name, but Colby Jr. So this is not an attack piece. This is not a anti conservative. It's just a documentary that we're told at least is supposed to be neutral or fair and balanced or whatever. But if you recall, and Mark Hacker brought this to my attention, a couple of these characters that he interviewed, that are interviewed in the documentary, actually come up in the Franklin stuff. And somebody mentioned to me that Colby might have actually been in the Discovery Channel banned documentary that it's like the most famous conspiracy documentary ever about the Boys Town abuse stuff. The famous Discovery Channel documentary. It still floats around on the internet. I'm sure you can find it. Senator John DeCamp, etc. Franklin cover-up. But somebody said that Colby was in that. I didn't recall that, but interesting. Now I have to go back and rewatch that because I don't remember this. But one of the characters that comes up in this documentary had some connection to Craig Spence, who was involved in the Franklin stuff. So the lobbyist / CIA character.
People would turn to me and say, your dad was a murderer. My immediate reaction used to be, you don't know what you're talking about. And then I'd find myself thinking, was he? Well, who was he really?
I am against assassination.
And the reason we're doing this is because this ties in perfectly with the Phoenix program talk that we did, right? So we covered Douglas Valentine's book, The Phoenix Program, and Colby is the architect of the Phoenix Program. And this comes up quite a bit in the documentary. They interviewed several agents and spec ops, people who had been involved in the Phoenix Program. You'll notice there is the calling card, the death cards, the Ace of Spades. The Ace of Spades! If you're a Lemmy fan, I'm not a Motorhead fan, but I couldn't resist the opportunity to throw in an Ace of Spades Lemmy reference there. And, the documentary is very honest about the reality of this, although they don't go into many of the details. So we don't learn about teaching the people to be cannibals, encouraging the Phoenix Program operatives to engage in eating the organs of the victims. Right, that doesn't come up. But there's this sort of, an assassination program. As if that, I mean, first of all, why is that even controversial? I understand that in the 60s and 70s they're having these hearings, right? And the church hearings come up in the documentary. And Frank Church is over there like, is this an assassination gun? And it's like, whoa, the CIA has a gun that will assassinate people. And you sit there and you think, well, but wait a minute. Isn't it an army? A giant 1 million person assassination gun? I mean, the army does assassinate people. So why is this even a thing? As if we're the United States, we don't assassinate people. Isn't that what soldiers do? Soldiers assassinate people. What are you talking about? So I don't even understand why it's even a big deal that they're, I mean, it's like a level of gaslighting and like Orwellian stuff where it's like, yeah, we'll train millions and hundreds of thousands of soldiers to go and die on the battlefield, but we don't have assassination programs because we don't want to kill people. Like, what? This just makes no sense to me. Now, I'm not saying it's good that there are assassination programs. I'm just saying the military is an assassination program. This is so dumb. That's what I'm trying to say here, right? What is the military but an assassination program?
I think it's counterproductive, and I've issued directives against it.
By the time I got there in 1969, it felt much more like an assassination program.
So there you see, right? Phoenix Program. Right there.
An assassination program.
Current investigations could uncover several assassinations of which the CIA was involved.
Yes, there were abuses. There was no doubt about it. They really got out of hand.
As one person to make the determination that you do not trust 435 members, each of whom won an open election in ostensibly a democratic society, I would say to you, sir, you don't have the right to play God.
How many files of this character do you maintain on other members of Congress?
Do you know what documents he destroyed?
Don't you think that's an exceedingly loose way to run an agency, particularly the CIA?
So the irony is you got all these, the Democratic senators back then are like grilling these people for the very thing that the Democratic people in control now do. It's just such an obvious like scam, right? Like who can't see that this is all ridiculous, right? Now with the character of Colby, what's interesting is that when we go through the documentary, we find out that early on he had been stationed, I think, with the OSS in Italy and appeared to have had connections with what looks like Gladio. I don't think in the documentary they mention Gladio, but it's obviously Operation Gladio, right? I mean, it's like, so he's stationed there during World War II for OSS stuff. No, I'm sorry. He went into Germany. He was a parachuter into Germany for the OSS in World War II, period. Then he's stationed in Italy to be involved in, I assume, the stay-behind Gladio units, right? There he starts working with a cardinal. I don't think they mention the name of the cardinal, but this all vindicates what Wemhoff says, right? So pretty clearly has to be Gladio stay-behind units that Colby is in charge of. They actually interview Zbigniew Brzezinski in this documentary. So Zbig is there talking about the Cold War, talking about William Colby. But there was an interesting element too where they were talking about the values of Colby and his approach to spycraft, and he talked about reading T.E. Lawrence and the people that he trained, that they wanted to be like the way T.E. Lawrence operated with the Arabs, right? So the America, which shows that the American attitude is basically exactly the same as the British intelligence attitude, right? Exactly what T.E. Lawrence does, being the British intelligence spy, setting up the colonizing the Arab tribes, like the other British intelligence agents did. Philby Sr. And if you've not seen the Peter O'Toole film Lawrence of Arabia, I highly recommend it because it's about this. And so and I hate to use the woke speak here, but I don't know what else to say it. But the colonizing approach of T.E. Lawrence here in regard to the British Empire is mimicked intentionally on the part of what Colby says the goal is. We will be the Pax Americana. I will try to be the T.E. Lawrence to America, for America. And so we get deep testimony. He was sent deep into enemy territory, by the OSS, and he was in charge of sabotage teams. So he trained people in Norway, a bunch of sabotage agents, to sabotage Axis operations during World War II. Then he's stationed during the time of the American century. So he'll play a key role in promoting this. What we find out is actually a Rockefeller planned operation of the American century that Henry Luce promotes. Colby's involved in the same Americanist attitude, promoting the extension of American empire. He's involved in Iron Curtain propaganda, the free world versus the slave world. Brzezinski in the documentary goes into his World War II missions. Then he's stationed in Italy, what I think is probably the Gladio stay behind units. And he's told when this is where it gets really interesting. He's told in Italy by the cardinal, if you really want good intelligence, go to church. So the Roman Catholic Church in Italy, we clearly see on the part of this cardinal, is a key hub for espionage, especially CIA operations. At this point, Colby is not that high level, right? He's just stationed in Italy. He's not been, his first big appointment will be CIA Chief of Asian Affairs, and that's when he will run the operations in Vietnam. Then he will be promoted after the Phoenix program to running the CIA, you see. So that's how he moves up the chain. And this is relevant because what appears to be giant failures, what appears to be a collapse, Vietnam is a big failure, supposedly. Phoenix program supposedly draws all this ire. Well, what do you know? He ends up promoted. And that's something that we find out pretty often in the intelligence world, is that the biggest failures end up being the greatest successes. And that's what leads us to suggest or to think that these operations are not what they appear to be. In fact, was Vietnam actually a giant demoralization effort on the part of the global elite, and thus Vietnam was actually a giant success, right? I lean towards that view the more I study Vietnam. And we know from the Valentine book that the principles of police state, reorganization of society, continuity of government, experimentation with drones and AI that began in Vietnam, as well as biowarfare, spraying things, all of that was a research and development approach on the part of the American deep state in NAM. That's what NAM was about. And the drug war too. But the drug war side of it wasn't just about profits. It was about studying what happens when the troops are all addicted to these things. What happens when these troops come back home? How does that affect the domestic population when all these NAM vets are basically ruined? And the importation of drugs as a result of that theater of war. Southeast Asia, huge golden triangle. It's a big drug hubs, okay? crucial to controlling how the planet runs. Now, perhaps as a trad cat, younger Colby is naive and thinks that he's fighting for the good guys. But as he rises in this intelligence power structure, we find him to be more and more of a conflicted man, even though he's getting promoted. And much like in the situation of the Courier, we find his home life falling apart. He ends up divorced. Trad cats thought you can't get divorced. Well, he ends up divorcing his wife. I think he marries some other woman. But before we get to that, we have to point out that he then makes inroads with the Vatican, gets very close to a high-profile cardinals when he's stationed in Italy. The cardinals directly tell him that if you want real intelligence, start going to the Latin Mass, start going to church. This is 50s, right? So this is prior to Cuban Missile Crisis. This might be this is 50, so this is after his OSS period. So the CIA cardinal, whoever that is, basically says, we got to support the Christian Democrats. That's the only way to beat the rising Communist Party in Italy. So the Communist Party is getting popular. This is where Gladio and the stay-behind units come into play. Gladio is about basically putting an end to the communist uprisings and success throughout Europe. Then this leads to him being stationed in Vietnam in 1955 to take on the role of head of Asian operations for the CIA. And let's see, there was a quote that I thought was very fascinating. It's strange to think that the threat from the North Vietnamese wasn't clearly seen, because they interview Colby's wife throughout this. His son interviews the mom throughout the documentary. And I thought that was interesting because it's like, so if this was a big threat, why would it not be seen? Right? And she's saying that, oh, it was actually a huge threat, right? But remember, Colby and these characters are participating in the Cold War strategy of the Cold Warriors, the neocons, the Rockefellers, etc., to stress that this is a global threat. And it's not because they really wanted to get rid of communism. Remember, Nelson Rockefeller, intimately involved in the government at this time. He was stationed as, I think Nelson wasn't he stationed in Latin South America, CIA chief? And there's this fascinating section in the documentary where they play audio of JFK and RFK arguing with Helms, Henry Cabot Lodge, and some of these other deep state people. And they're like telling him, no, you're going to do what we say. And it doesn't, there's even a point in the documentary where they say, we don't give a damn what the White House thinks about this, because we are the real power. Okay. The intelligence apparatus, CIA, that's the real power. And we will do what we want to in this theater of war. And so they actually overthrow Diem in a coup, which JFK and RFK didn't want to do. And that's wild, right? Because it actually comes up in the documentary. They're like, the CIA is just like, we don't give a shit what you think. We work for higher masters above you, President Kennedy. And I wonder who got rid of President Kennedy and RFK. I wonder who. I mean, maybe the people involved in telling him that we will stage a coup in Vietnam and we don't give a shit what you think. I mean, how is this not obvious? How can people not figure out who really runs this country? It's so stupid, right? It's like, and do you think that those people care anything about you? Cold War boomer, do you think they care anything about you? They don't care about you. Again, by the way, they interview this Jesuit, this weird Jesuit dude in his interview. Obviously, he's some kind of asset. They interview him like 5 times. He's in like 5 clips, and he's just like, yes, well, deception is necessary, and deception is good, and, that's what we have to do to fight the good fight. It's just a bunch of baloney, dude. It's like, who believes these people? How do you believe these people? Like, this obvious Jesuit just con man, right? Anyway, so that's his Jesuit counselor. I don't know who the Jesuit is. He a counselor to William Colby? What does this mean? He was a Jesuit counselor. Who does he counsel? Why does this person matter? Why are we interviewing this guy, right? But it vindicates again the Wemhoff book, the John Courtney Murray CIA asset, C.D. Jackson doctrinal warfare program, all 100% vindicated. This documentary is not about that, but it shows that's all legit, 100% true, totally. And by the way, in the Wemhoff, in the Douglas Valentine book, I pointed out how it wasn't just the Roman Catholics that the CIA had made this alliance with in Vietnam. All the Sedevacantists traced their lineage from Ngo Dinh Thuc, who was also a CIA asset, according to Douglas Valentine in Vietnam. Interesting. Now, as the documentary moves on to discuss the operations in Vietnam, at first, JFK and RFK wanted to rely on special operations. So their whole thing was, let's just use spec ops. We don't want a full-on war here. And then it turned into, no, the CIA and the deep state said, no, we're going to have a coup. We're going to overthrow Diem. And we're going to send in the counterintelligence specialists who end up becoming the Phoenix program. So the Phoenix program is initiated. Colby is the main architect of this. And if you remember in the Valentine book, they brought in like people from the Ford Foundation or people who'd worked at Ford Motor Corporate, because it was a corporate strategy of efficiency in terror. Yes, corporate terror. You heard me right. So you want to think about the war on terror. Well, according to Valentine, you have to understand NAM, right? You got to go talk to Boomer Garcia.
Oh, yeah, man. When I was over in NAM, I was on a vision quest, and I seen inside the heart of America, and I seen a giant dollar sign, man.
So Boomer Garcia is more right than you know. So it's not really about dollar signs, right? And they again mentioned that Lawrence of Arabia was the model. So Lawrence of Arabia is mentioned at the beginning for World War II, the OSS. Vietnam, Colby again mentions that Lawrence of Arabia is the model for how they want to handle the colony, right? Or the liberators, right? The United States as the liberators. And by the way, don't bitch at me as if I'm defending Soviets. They're both colonizers, right? It's just two different strategies or programs, right? The Soviets are like, oh, we're going to free you. We're going to be your liberators with Marxism and communism. And the West is like, no, we're going to be your liberators with democracy and Coke and Pepsi, right? So which of the liberators do you want? Well, is it possible, have you ever thought about maybe that both of them are not liberators? Maybe both of them are pragmatic dialectical control structures. Has anybody ever thought of that? Even though constantly books come out demonstrating this, high level, powerful sources, people can't figure this out. They cannot wrap their heads around the Cold War being a managed dialectic. Okay, so the Kennedy said, let's keep using the special forces. No, CIA. Now, this is by the way, this is the height of the Roman Catholic power in America, right? I think 60s, Vatican II, John Courtney Murray, C.D. Jackson, you got a Roman Catholic president, you got RFK, you got William Colby as the trad cat, head of the CIA. I mean, this is like the apex of the Roman Catholic power structure, period. But it's also the end of that period, because we know what happens to RFK, JFK. Colby ends up under all of these Senate hearings, which I don't even, do these hearings ever even do anything, or they just show trials to make people look bad, right? Congressional inquiries, hearings, they don't do any, does anybody ever get any like prison time? Or is it just like to put on a show like the Congress and the senator, like they're doing something? And they like, it was grilled on Capitol Hill today. But what does this do? Like, does anybody actually ever stop doing anything? No. Right. And so Colby ends up under all of these Senate hearings about the Phoenix program and the CIA's assassination programs. Right. Now, look at the evolution of the absurdity of liberalism, by the way, because if you look at all the people grilling Colby, it's all these Democrats who are actually making good points. So they're up there saying, like, aren't you just doing all this at the behest of giant corporations? Aren't you just assassinating and mind controlling people with MK Ultra? Isn't this, being used on the domestic population? Isn't this taking away our liberties? So what the Democrats are saying in the 60s and 70s is the same stuff that you hear people like me or AJ saying now. But now that is far right crazy talk. What? How is that even possible? It's weird, bizarre. But again, the most telling part of this whole documentary in terms of deep state stuff was that, well, for one thing they say is that there was an awesome admission. I forget who it was, but some guy's like, Diem was a Roman Catholic, but he existed in the midst of a Buddhist country that had an affinity for, their Soviet support. And so what we did was we created a made-up image around Diem that was completely created, that he was a Democrat. So it was all just fake. Okay, the Diem government was a puppet government of the United States, but they created the idea that it was a democratic regime. It was all made up, and people didn't buy it. And this, by the way, is where I hadn't even realized this. Everybody's seen that famous picture of the Buddhist monk who immolated himself. That is from this. That is the protests against the Diem government, in case you were wondering. So they bring in Henry Cabot Lodge on the part of the deep state, and he comes in and says the CIA will decide to topple Diem, and we will decide that. By the way, the reason that Vietnam matters in this whole theater of war is because that's the key to controlling Southeast Asia. Controlling Southeast Asia is the key to the drug trade. One key side to the drug trade, because that's a big part of this. Then we get the obvious villain characters of Helms, Harriman, Averell Harriman, Richard McNamara, and Henry Cabot Lodge, who say, we will decide what to do in Vietnam, and we don't care what you say, JFK. Now, I'm not lionizing JFK. I don't really care about who was the real Democrat man of the people. I think there's a lot of corruption and oddness when it comes to JFK. Obviously came to power through organized crime. That's how he got elected. That the whole family got elected because they were all tied to organized crime. Going back to their father running liquor with Al Capone. Okay, so these are old school politicians, but clearly JFK is running afoul this entrenched military industrial complex OSS CIA establishment. And clearly you can read between the lines in this documentary and figure out that, okay, those are some of the people that were involved in JFK. Clearly. Now, they say after this that the United States bore shame in all these tragedies. And we thought we had the moral high ground. And even his wife says this, right? And supposedly William Colby is, he's ashamed of the atrocities, and in the hearings he's, there were abuses and there was some bad apple. That's always, there was a few rotten apples and we'll have to clean out the system, right? This baloney excuse that we always get. But Vietnam is the breakdown of the narrative that the United States is on a holy mission to bring democracy and freedom. And they even sort of laugh at this in the documentary as if everybody knows that's absurd. Even the deep state people that they interview in the documentary laugh at it. Okay, who believes this, right? And so they moved away from special operations to conventional warfare. This brings about the Phoenix program, where they train people to be serial killers. Colby pushed for this version of guerrilla warfare, and he cited Jesuits and Ignatius in part of this holy warfare philosophy. Bizarre. Citing Ignatius and Jesuits for this Phoenix program approach of guerrilla. What? It's really weird. Now, I'm theorizing here because I can't prove this, but I would theorize that because there is a connection between MK Ultra and the Phoenix program, we also know there's a connection to mind control and the Jesuit approach to a confessor confessing his sins. It's not Jesuits, but the model of the Jesuits is utilized in the handler-operative relationship, the manipulation between the handler and the operative, and that could thus play a key role in the organizational structures in MK Ultra, the different approaches to mind control. Clearly, the Jesuit relationship of confessor to confessee could easily be implemented there, and we do see these high-level CIA people like Colby making reference to the mysteries of the Jesuits and Ignatius Loyola's approach. And the Jesuit in the documentary even says that. So again, not far-fetched to think along those lines. However, that does not mean Jesuits run the world. That's kind of ridiculous. But they are verifiably part of that, allied with the CIA power structure as per the Wemhoff book. And so Colby runs these counterinsurgency operations, presses for it, admits that there were abuses, admits there was corruption, admits it was a TERROR campaign. Now, wait a minute. So it is a terror campaign. But I thought we don't do that. We're fighting the war on it. Again, welcome to Upside Down world. Welcome to Orwell world. I mean, the only way to fight TERROR is to engage in TERROR. That's the logic here. Well, so after all these grillings, Colby steps down and divorces, marries some other woman, and then one day floats off on his boat and washes up on a shore. Now, the son in the documentary, his son implies that he thinks his dad ended his own life. I mean, maybe. I guess you could be guilt-ridden and whatever, but also, I mean, come on, high-profile that people. I mean, obviously the immediate thought is, okay, who got rid of that guy? So he spent 16 years running these operations in Vietnam. It was all his baby. We're supposed to think it was a failure, but was it really a failure? Again, I'm not convinced that Vietnam was actually a failure, because it really, if you think about the vantage point of the deep state and what they would have wanted to accomplish via Vietnam, I mean, everything that they would have wanted, Vietnam was a stellar success, right? I mean, who is so naive and normie to believe that intelligence failures are not intelligence successes? The Big 9 event, that was a huge intelligence success on the part of the parties that gained from that. the surveillance infrastructure alone made the Big 9 event a huge success. So we have then the 70s, as I said, investigations, the church hearings, the 70s investigations into the intelligence community. And if you listen to these investigations, it's wild because everything that they're saying is so correct. And nowadays, it was prophetic. Nowadays, it's like 100 times crazier. And to listen to the ridiculous nonsense of Colby sitting there saying, well, we have to do all this because the CIA keeps America safe. I mean, who actually believes this? Who actually believes that these foreign campaigns are actually for the purpose of keeping us safe? I mean, the same people that believe that there were weapons of mass destruction, right, in Iraq, right? And we fought Saddam to keep us safe. I mean, come on. Everyone knows that was fake. And in this documentary, they keep bringing up the fact of, well, Colby was such a honorable man committed to the truth that he was always in the struggle being a trad Catholic with a life of lies and deception. Now, maybe that's true, and maybe that's why he was so guilt-ridden and wanted to end his life. Maybe. Or maybe he was a wicked man, and maybe he knew too much and was disposed of. I don't know. I don't know. But anytime we have somebody that high profile floating up on a riverbank, I mean, come on. And when Colby steps down, who steps into that role? Read my lips. No taxes. The infamous Bush Sr. Infamous Bush. So again, total 100% operative minion of the deep state. In fact, Averell Harriman is in the government prior to this, telling JFK, we don't care what you think about Vietnam. You're not in charge here. And of course, what's Harriman? Bush, that's part of the Bush family, right? Averell Harriman. I forget what his relationship is to Bush Sr. But, I mean, who can't figure this out? And who actually thinks that these people have your best interest? I mean, it's just... Let's see exactly what his role was. Okay, so there's William and then there's Averell. So there's two Averell Harrimans. Democrat politician, railroad baron. Okay, so I forgot what they're... but aren't they married into the Bushes somehow? What is that connection? Prescott. Okay, so Prescott was the partner of Averell Harriman, Best Investment Bank. So they're not married. They were business partners. But they are related as cousins, apparently. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously, you know, power elite families here at the government level here. They're not the top of the pyramid, but they're, you know, these are people equivalent to the Kissingers, the Brzezinskis, the Bushes. You know, that's these people. Sort of dynastic government level people. But there you go. I mean, pretty much everything that we saw in the Wemhoff analyses backed up. Pretty much everything, well, most of the basic details of Douglas Valentine's Phoenix Program book also backed up in this documentary, which was supposed to be fairly, fair and balanced, I guess is what it's supposed to be.
This director was always caught between doing the wish of the president and the law. And when the president said, do this, do that, the law got set aside normally.
He was really a tortured soul.
The family wasn't
always let into this world of his. He never had to really tell me anything.
My father lived in a world of secrets, always watching, listening, his eye on the door. By the time I turned 30, I came to understand the man that nobody knew. Or at least I thought I did.
Yeah, so definitely worth watching, and you see all those high-level, deep state goons being interviewed in there, and I have quite a few admissions there. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's analysis. If you would, hit like and share, and I should be doing the Anthony Sutton book pretty soon. Do the part 2 of that. And also remind you guys that the next event is ready to go in Orlando. That will be, when is it? September 3rd. So the tickets are available for the Orlando event. If you didn't get to the Nashville event, we had a blast. It was basically like a big party. But we had comedy. I did my cringe comedy. Everybody seemed to like it, so I'm going to do it again. We had an hour of Jamie. We had an hour and a half of analysis of the new book meta-narratives. And then we had open Q&A, and we had the book signing, so it was a lot of fun. Everybody got to hang out for the whole weekend in Nashville. 120 of us. It was a blast. A lot of fun. And we'll be doing the same thing in Orlando September 3rd. So you can get your tickets right now over at Eventbrite in that link for the Orlando event September 3rd, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., and it is at the Tap Room. So for those of you who like to imbibe alcohol, you will have the ability to do that. The Nashville event, some people brought their own alcohol. I don't care if you drink at my event. We'll be at a dang brewery, so you'll be able to drink if you like to drink. I'm not a drinker, but if you like to drink, I don't care. Drink away. It's going to be fun. We're going to be talking about the book. We're going to be doing Q&A as well, except we got an added bonus. Father Vladimir that you saw in the video on Renaissance history will be there live also giving a presentation. So if you're wondering why the cost is a little bit more, it's because Father Vladimir will be there presenting as well. He will be doing a presentation on Renaissance art. I'm assuming he's going to be talking about Renaissance geometry and structures within the artwork, symbolism within the artwork. Like, the stupid stuff that Dan Brown does? He does like the real version of that, right? So that's going to be awesome. That's why the ticket is a little bit more, because he's going to be there. So I wanted to pay him for, I've seen his presentation, multiple versions of it. So it's really good. It's definitely worth seeing. Jamie will be presenting on Hollywood and the occult. She's taken up that topic, and I will be talking about meta-narratives. So I will be going through doing a heated philosophical sermon. It's almost like a philosophy sermon. That's what I did for the new book meta-narratives, which is available at the website. You can get signed copies over at Jay's Analysis in the shop. Very readable 200-page book of my best philosophical essays. And also you can now get the infamous Red Book. They did come in from the printer. I've got them. The infamous 667-page Red Book, which was put together by I don't know who. And since I can't stop them from printing it, I might as well just sell it. So I am going to go ahead and sell the Red Book. We've already sold about 100 of them right away. And get your refutations of Rome, Protestantism, atheism, almost 700 pages worth of my essays over about 10 years. Not all of my essays, but just the essays relating to philosophy and theology are in this gigantic 700-page, $45 book. That's why it's more. So, to be clear, because a lot of people ask this, if you get this book, pretty much everything in this is in this book. The meta-narratives book is included in this. However, it's $45 because it's 700 pages. This one is a readable 200 pages. It's also better spaced and font and readable. It's edited. This is kind of edited. Whoever did this, it's decently edited. This is well edited. So yes, there's pros and cons either way. I wanted to get to this great game book, but I didn't get to it. But maybe we'll do that next time. do a separate talk. Anyway, I hope you guys liked it. Definitely go check out the documentaries and the movies if they seem like they're up in your alley. Let's see, super chat from $25. Paranoid syntax error. Would you be interested in a decentralized Patreon I'm building with Dick Masterson? It's censorship resistant and you get paid every month in crypto. Well, I appreciate that $25. However, it's similar to what I'm already involved in with Rockfin. So Rockfin is a blockchain-based, free speech-based company, and have a really great relationship with Rockfin. I'm a big fan of it. Love those guys over there, and I want everybody to sign up for Rockfin. So although I appreciate your offer, I don't think I would want to not be involved with Rockfin. So I'm committed to that. But thank you for that paranoid syntax error. Andrew, $5. I don't know if this has anything to do with the topic, but I was wondering if you would do a review of Westworld. Actually, Jamie and I are working through Westworld right now. So if you remember in my, I don't remember if my first or second book, I think there is a chapter on Westworld. But at that time when I put that out, it was Westworld 1. So I had only seen season 1. That's all we had at the time. So yes, Jamie and I are going to work through the rest of Westworld, and we will do a full-on podcast analysis for the rest of, because I haven't seen it. I don't know where Westworld goes. So it's going to be fun to see. I've only seen season 1, so we will get back into it this week. You're thinking in the same vibes and mindset as me, dude. Storm the Cat, $10. Hello, Storm the Cat. I totally agree. Fight the power and storm, not the Bastille, but the cat. BMX 1966, $10. Cheers, Jay. I can't wait for the Hamza Seraphim debate. Well, I think most people think that he won't accept that debate challenge, so we will have to wait and see. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's stream. Sorry we got cut off earlier with Mama Gaia spitting electricity at us from the sky, shutting down my internet. But you can get the new books at the website, both the Red Book and Meta Narratives. You can sign up over on Rockfin. If you enjoyed this stream, definitely go watch the Occult Spy stream over on Rockfin. It is a premium stream, but it is definitely worth your time and the money to go watch that.